I just think it's critically important that we ensure and we do everything that we can to ensure that every child in our cities are able to have something that they can be engaged in that is quality, that is uplifting, and that is inspiring them to be the best they can possibly be. Welcome to another episode of Our Children Need Roots and Wings. I'm your host, Eric Lewis. Take a second and listen. You can feel the shift in the air, can't you? The school year is winding down. The Louisiana and Baton Rouge heat is starting to rise, and we are standing at a crossroads in our community. For our children, summer is supposed to be a season of wonder, a time to play, a time to fly, to explore, and to grow. But we have to be honest with ourselves about the reality on the ground right now. In our neighborhoods and all across our community, as the temperature rises, so does the risk. We are seeing a rise in local crime that threatens to clip the wings of our young people before they even get off the ground. Today, I'm not here to talk about statistics. I'm here to talk about solutions. I'm here to talk about how we, as a community, provide the roots that keep our kids grounded and the wings that keep them busy, focused, and safe. We have a lot of updates to go through, from the incredible wins that we've been blessed to be a part of at Scotlandville Magnet High School and our other partner school and community sites, to new and monumental accomplishments by some of our previous guests. But the heart of today's conversation is simple. An engaged child is a safe child. Let's get into where we're going this summer to make the summer of 2026 a season of building and not a season of loss. So thank you again for joining us on today. So it's been a few weeks, but we've been busy during this time period. So we haven't had an episode in a couple of weeks now, but that's primarily because we've been busy with some of our different school sites and really engaged and enthralled in things that have been going on with one of our school partners, that being Scotlandville Magnet High School. So I just want to kind of talk through some of the things that we've been doing at BRSTEM over the last few weeks. But before we get into that, just want to remind everyone that the purpose of this podcast and all the work that we do, falling in line with the title, Our Children Need Roots and Wings, is to really try to ensure that we work collaboratively with our guests and our other partners to ensure that we provide a solid foundation for the children that we seek to serve so that they can take that foundation and reach their full potential in whatever they decide to do. Now, for our purposes, we are succinctly focused on STEM, but recognizing that they may not be the interests of every child. And so, again, the purpose of this podcast is to really work collaboratively with our partners throughout the community to ensure that we maximize awareness for resources that are available to our children. And so that's being said, just want to kind of share a few things that we've been engaged in recently. I want to start with Scotlandville Magnet High School. And again, shout out to Mr. Paul Jackson, who was a previous guest. One of the things that I've shared with the leadership at the school and some of the teachers that we have the opportunity to work with is that Scotlandville has a lot going on, right? They always have something going on for the kids, which I think is very productive. We've had the opportunity to go on field trips with the students, ones that we didn't necessarily sponsor. And so one of the cool things was recently Dow Chemical hosted some of the engineering students, and it was a great opportunity for them to see engineering in the field. A lot of the young ladies, and in particular, one of the young ladies was really interested in seeing female engineers. And so that was a pretty cool experience for her. And I think for the students as a whole, to really see themselves in these roles. I think it was also great because they got to see several Scotlandville Magnet High School alums that are currently working in the engineering field for Dow Chemical. But in addition to that, I would say probably 85% of the time lately had been in working with their first robotics team, which they've branded as Stingfield. And so we had an opportunity to partner with the school and helping the students to design and build their robot so that they could participate in the Bayou Regional Competition in Kenner, Louisiana, in the early parts of April. Um, and so it's a part of the first robotic competition, but it was a regional competition that they had an opportunity to participate in. And I want to say we had about 15 students, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders that over the course of, I think since February was when we started, had the opportunity to help in the process of building a robot, coding and programming a robot, learning about electrical engineering and troubleshooting on the robot. And so we had an awesome time at the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner, Louisiana. Um, the competition is such that you work in these teams of three, which was called an alliance. And so it was a great opportunity for the students to also be able to network, share the strengths and weaknesses of their particular robot, and then kind of really figure out where as a team they would work best in an alliance. And so very proud of the work that they were able to put in. I want to say that over the course of about 8 to 12 matches, um, the team was able to win, and I may not remember this exactly, but I know we won at least 3 matches. But I think it was a great learning experience that the students had the opportunity to kind of, continue to code their robot and to develop it and enhance it as we got closer to competition. But again, I think it was a great learning experience. And as of now, the plan is to participate in at least one competition over the summer, leading into next school year, where we obviously will have a head start and plan to be much more competitive going into next school year. So that has been a great experience. But we also have continued to work with a number of our elementary and middle school sites, as well as Capitol High, and continue to expose students to the breadth of STEM um, workshops and learnings and skill sets that we have been offering. And so really appreciative to every school leader who has agreed to partner with us and to let us come into their school community. And so again, this school year, we've had the opportunity to work with 13 different school sites, whether it be during the school day or through after school programming. And so I would say that in total, on a monthly basis, we've been able to impact between our various school sites and our 2 Saturday sites. We've been able to impact nearly 700 kids on a monthly basis. And so we're in the process of kind of winding things down for the summer. Winding things down for the school year and preparing for our summer activities, which we're going to talk about shortly. But I do also want to kind of highlight some of the things that have been going on with some of our guests that I really hope that you guys would go and support some of the great work that they're doing. And so I mentioned Mr. Jackson and Scotlandville High School. I want to talk about Mr. Isaiah Marshall, who he and his family recently released a web series that you should be able to find by going to the Isaiah Marshall Foundation website. And so they've launched a new production company called Marshall House Studios. Mr. Marshall has also published his first book, kind of taking you through some of his journeys health-wise, and just, some other things going through life. And so I would strongly encourage folks to check that out and support that endeavor as well. I believe one of our first guests was my brother, Mr. Marcus Lewis, and we had talked quite a bit about mentoring during his interview. And so he sent me a text message recently that he has gotten back into the 100 Black Men. So I just wanted to shout him out for that and applaud him for that, because it's very important, again, as we continue to try to build the podcast that, we walk the walk, that we continue to talk. And so just excited for another opportunity for him to get engaged with young people through his work with the 100 Black Men. And so not just those 2 individuals. If you recall, we had Miss Jasmine Johnson from Brain early on. They recently had a workshop on AI development for folks working in the education space. And we'll talk about that more in a later episode. Brain is continuing to do work to try to organize and help build collaborators through school partnerships to ensure that we have quality providers going into school, providing after school and school programming to supplement the work that school leaders and educators are providing for their students. I also want to shout out Miss Vicky Lee and the work at Rosebud Healthcare. I know that they have another CNA class coming up for the summer. And so if you would, I would recommend that you go to their website. If you know of any young people that are interested in starting a medical career as a CNA. And then lastly, I continue to see the good work of Mr. Darren Franklin, and trying to provide skills for young people to really traverse challenges in life, and to be successful at what they're striving to do. And so there's several other individuals, but I did want to just kind of quickly highlight those. And so I would also invite you to go to our YouTube page or our Spotify pages and go back through some previous podcast episodes if you've not had a chance to hear them. But I just did want to just kind of recognize and celebrate those previous guests for the work that they're continuing to do. And so with that, I just want to kind of jump into making sure that we all understand how important it is to ensure that our young people are actively engaged in some sorts of activities as we approach the summer months. So we talk, folks have talked about for years, how an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And so I just think it's important that we had this conversation about the need to ensure that we have something for our young people to do this summer. I've heard oftentimes people talk about, especially when there's some incident or some fatal incident that takes place. And I even saw it recently about a month or so ago. We often complain about the lack of activities that are available for children. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. So I'm respectfully kind of disagree with that. Because I do think that we have a number of activities. I think part of the challenge is making sure there's awareness of what's out there for our young people. And I also don't think it's a lack of resources. And talking about Baton Rouge, Louisiana specifically, you can drive around the city of Baton Rouge, and there's a lot of investment going on in a lot of different areas. And even in disconnected communities, there's a lot of money being put into the ground, developing structures, developing enterprises, and things of that nature. So I don't even feel like it's a lack of resources. So I think that, we have the resources in our community, and I think there's opportunities for our young people. But I think the two challenges that we have that I hopefully want to try to address and talk through, and then again, as a community, we can think through collaboratively on how we address these two challenges. So I think the first challenge is really making sure families that need the resources the most or need the opportunities the most are aware of them. So I think that's one challenge. And then I think secondly, the other challenge is making sure we prioritize where we're putting resources. And so I'll just at this point kind of give a shout out to the former Mayor Sharon Wistenbroom and the efforts that were underway for her Summer of Hope initiative. And in all candor and candidness, BRSTEM was able to take advantage of that opportunity. In that allowed us to provide scholarships for children to attend our summer camps. And I know that there are several other organizations that did the same thing. And so my understanding and the goal of that was, again, maximize the number of children that were able to actively engage in activities through the summer months. And so I know that there are opportunities like that exist. And we just have to ensure that we continue to bring those opportunities to the table. And so, again, not only our organization, but there's several organizations in Baton Rouge that were able to take advantage of those opportunities and provide programming for children, at least over the previous 2 summers. And so that's one thing. I think also when we understand how critical it is, and not just, grants and federal funding or, local and state funding, but as leaders in the community, we understand how critical it is to ensure that all of our children have some form of activity to participate in. And on our brain, I'll say some quality activities to participate in during the summer months. Then we'll be able to address some of the issues that we continue to complain about in our community. And so I don't think it necessarily just has to be summer camps, and so in previous years, and hopefully this is a plan against this year, but over the last few years, in Baton Rouge, we've had summer camps. We've had our local school systems that have had enrichment programs that took place. And I get and understand that, a lot of those resources were made available through COVID relief funding. But again, as leaders in our community, hopefully we can understand the impact that ensuring that children were actively engaged in activities versus on the streets during the summer, we're able to have on the joy and the liveliness of our own communities. And so whether it be summer camps, whether it be school-based programming, whether it be a church, whether it be churches, again, private nonprofits, for-profit organizations, I just think it's critically important that we ensure and we do everything that we can to ensure that every child in our cities are able to have something that they can be engaged in that is quality, that is uplifting, and that is inspiring them to be the best they can possibly be. And so I think that is my big challenge for all of us this summer. I will reflect again back on, and so even situations, because I get that, I've seen some summer camps that are like $300 and some a week. And I get that that's like out of reach for a lot of people, but I also will continue to push that we have to make sure that we're providing quality program. And it doesn't necessarily mean that quality program, it has to be at that price point. But we want to make sure that we're providing quality programming that is helping to advance young people academically, socially, as they continue to grow. We have to make sure we're providing programming that's safe and nurturing and meets the needs of our children. And so that being said, I'll just kind of talk briefly about two programs that BRSTEM has in place, and then I'll go into some of our partner organizations. And so for this will be, I believe, the 6th year that we've had our STEM camp. We'll actually have 2 locations this year, one at the North Street Park, which we've been for the last 3 or 4 years. And then thanks to one of our partner schools, Redesigned Schools of Louisiana, will be having a second location in the Glen Oaks community at Lanier Elementary for our summer camp as well. And so we're looking to serve about 600 kids. We're looking to serve about 60 kids between those 2 camps. It's an 8-week camp. We cover a different topic each week. The young people will have about 45 minutes of solid reading throughout the day. They'll get 45 minutes of math enrichment, 45 minutes of science enrichment. We provide breakfast, lunch, and a snack through the support of the EBR summer feeding program. And then each afternoon, they get 2 hours of STEM development when they're working on a STEM project. And we're covering topics like coding, robotics, artificial intelligence. We actually merge STEM and dance. We merge STEM and athletics. We're doing structural engineering, aeronautical engineering, chemistry, and biology. Our camp participants will have an opportunity to take 4 field trips that are specifically related to the STEM thing for that particular week. And then the other 4 weeks, we'll have a fun Friday where we bring both camps together and the campers get to present the projects that they worked on during that particular week, or we'll have some type of video game competition or something of that nature each week. And so that's one of the activities. And so you can find out more information about our summer camp on our website. The second one I'm wanting folks to know about, which is really important in my mind, is our BRSTEM Fellows. And so that is specifically for rising 9th graders and rising 10th graders. We're only going to take about 15 students, and it'll be a 6-week program from 8 to 12, Monday through Thursday. They will get to participate in some of the field trips, not all of them, but some of the field trips with the summer camp participants. But they'll actually be trained to be facilitators of our STEM activities. They'll also be engaged in college preparatory activities. So they'll be researching potential colleges and college majors, careers. They'll also get ACT prep training, and they will get math and science enrichment in preparation for their EOC testing. And so the cool thing about that, whereas families have to pay for the summer camp, the BRSTEM program is actually free. And at the conclusion of the program, we pay each participant a $450 stipend. At the conclusion of 6 weeks of training for 4 hours a day, for 4 days a week, uh, rising ninth and 10th graders get a $450 stipend. And so we continue that because when schools start back in the fall, they will have the opportunity to be a part of our team on Saturdays at our Saturday sessions, where they get to work our Saturday STEM sessions and get paid for it. And so shout out to Mr. Jeremiah Cage, a student at Madison Preparatory Academy in Baton Rouge, who was in the cohort last summer and has participated in just about every Saturday session this school year. And so I would definitely encourage you to share that information with rising and ninth and 10th graders in your life. And again, they can go to the website and to register for that. That application process includes an essay and an interview. And again, we're only taking 15 participants for that program. And so please share that information. So those are just two examples of activities that BRSTEM has over the summer, and we've been doing for a number of years to ensure that we keep kids engaged, um, you know, throughout the school year, throughout the year, to continue to help them to grow again, intellectually and socially. But in addition to that, we have a number of partners that we continue to work with over the summer that also have activities going on. And so for several years now, we have partnered with the City of Baker School System, who's now partnered with Hillis Community Schools for a summer enrichment program. And again, from our perspective, providing STEM development. But it's, I think, the City of Baker used to call it the Sensational Academy, but it was really a great way to keep their students engaged over the summer. And it wasn't necessarily the entire summer. I want to say it's been like a 6-week time period. They take the kids on field trips. They get a lot of academic remediation and enrichment, as well as some other enrichment activities. So shout out to the City of Baker School System and the Hillis Community Schools, again, for ensuring that young people have the opportunity to learn. That's an example of where another example of where young people can participate in summer learning at no cost to them. One of our other school partners, Redesign Schools, they have a non-traditional school calendar. And so for the most part, not like every single week, but for the most part, the kids are kind of in a year-round school. And so I want to say that July 24th, they'll be back in school. And so, I would encourage parents to check with your school district or your local school to see what types of programming, if any, may be in place at your school, because again, I think there's a chance that there's a number of schools throughout the Baton Rouge region that may be provided some type of enrichment. One of our partners, Big Buddy, I understand, is going to be having programming in the summer, as well as Boys and Girls Club. And so again, two other organizations, longstanding organizations in our community, that will have activities going on during the summer. And then lastly, and I'll just shout out Pastor James Riley. But again, I know there are a number of other number of churches that every year they have some type of summer camp. And so oftentimes, which honestly I find frustrating at times, when we have tragic things going on in our community, people want to put churches on the hot seat. But I will say that there are a number of churches that are doing a lot of positive things year round in our community, and we just want to recognize them and applaud them. And so do your research. As we always say, Google is our friend, and even now AI is our friend. And so there's a number of different programs that are taking place throughout the Baton Rouge community. I saw where I think Iberville Parish has, although it's not a full day camp, but Iberville Parish apparently is going to have I think it's 4 hours out of the day free summer camps for children in the Iberville Parish community. And so again, shout out to those leaders that see the need and understand the importance of ensuring that our children engage throughout the summer and have activities to participate in. And so again, I would just encourage everyone to do your research. ensure that just like you would with the school, if there's a program that's out there that you think might fit your child's need, make sure you ask some questions. Make sure that they understand your child. Make sure you understand what the programming requirements are and the expectations are. And make sure, you find something that you feel like would be a good fit for your child. If your child has academic concerns or needs or challenges, try to find something that has an academic focus. If your child is interested in sports, obviously, a lot of the youth sports programs, they actually crank up during the summer with training nowadays and things like that. So it's still another way to keep your child engaged and actively involved. And then just kind of going back old school, because we've also had an opportunity to work with like a number of homeschool cooperatives, but it reminds me of things like, back in the day where even if you're in a situation where you can't necessarily afford a summer camp or a summer program, I recall people in our neighborhood growing up, a lady she just had like a Bible study camp for a week at a time for kids in the neighborhood. But please try to find something for your child to be engaged in or something for their actively participate in over the summer. Also, to just be mindful, I mentioned the summer feeding program. And so we last year, our summer camp participated in the summer feeding program. So it ensured that the kids in our summer camps were able to have a nutritious meal. Our second location last year took place at Glen Oak High School initially. And so the kids at that summer camp got to eat breakfast and lunch at Glen Oaks High. And then we were a feeding site for our camp on North Street. The goal this year is for us to be a feeding site for both campsites, but I'm assuming it'll be the same thing this year where, different schools around the community were feeding sites. And so, look into that information as well. So again, there's a number of resources and things that are available for our young people. And the more we find out about them over the coming weeks leading into the summer break, we'll try to share that information as well. With this podcast, it's just very important to me that we understand as a community that parents have the ability to, and even young people that are listening, understand that it is our goal and our mission to ensure that whether through our podcast or through the work that BRSTEM does, that we focus on ensuring that we provide a solid foundation for the children that we serve in our communities. And so that they can take that foundation and that they can soar. They can go wherever and be whatever they desire to be, as long as they're able to be equipped with the tools to give back and provide an impact to their families and to their community. And so I shared that because there's some things that have transpired in the Baton Rouge community in Louisiana in recent weeks that are extremely traumatic and extremely troubling. And I'll just share this. I've shared this with a couple of people. Over the years, I've always, for whatever reason, have had this interest and this intrigue about being able to have a conversation with a young person that's created or participated in some type of traumatic or fatal crime, and just to understand why. And I think my reason for wanting to understand why is so that, and I think this comes from my background as an engineer, quite honestly, but just try to reverse engineer or backpedal and understand what caused this person to find themselves in that situation, and then to figure out going forward, how do we prevent it? And so by no means do I consider myself to be a sociologist, a psychologist, therapist, or any of that. But again, just kind of going back to my thought process as an engineer, there's this concept of a root cause analysis. And so, and not to suggest that human beings are gadgets, but most times when we do things, there's a reason why we do things. And if we can figure out the reason why, my hope is that we can cut down on a number of instances. And so, my condolences and prayers go out to the families that have been victimized by some heinous acts, both in Baton Rouge and in Shreveport over the last week or so. And I think what's interesting in what I said earlier is I was a part of a meeting with a group of other individuals, and I asked that very question to one of the facilitators or the leaders of this meeting, and that I'm trying to understand in the work that, because the meeting was about like this very topic of like, what are we going to do for the summer and how can we provide resources and activities for young people? And so that was one of my questions to one of the facilitators is if they've ever had the opportunity to actually sit down in a focus group setting with individuals, young people who have created violent crimes. And so she was sharing that they didn't necessarily they haven't done a focus group, but have had conversations, and she gave some different reasons um, for as far as what she's heard from young people who have committed violent crimes. And again, question of why is not to ever excuse it, but to figure out like what type of solutions we can bring to the table to help prevent it. And I'll be honest and very transparent in that part of the reason why that bothers me is because having run a middle school several years ago, and unfortunately, having students who I love dearly either be perpetrators or victims of violent crime is just very heartbreaking. And so I just think as a community, it's important for us to really do the work and to figure out like what's causing this and how do we prevent it. And so, so we talk about mentoring programs and all these different things, but I think on an individual level, it's very important that we get to the crux of this. And so my charge to everyone, whether it's a parent, whether it's a community leader, whether it's a nonprofit leader, whether it's a youth development leader, whether it's a church leader, my charge is for us to figure out together how do we solve this problem. And from my perspective, like just ensuring that kids are engaged for the summer is a start, is an important key element, but I don't necessarily believe like that's the end all be all of it. And so I would challenge us all to find a way to get engaged in this, whether it's summer programming, whether it's conversations with young people, whether it's getting engaged in an existing organization that is doing the work and lending your intellectual power, physical power, social power, whatever it is to make this happen. And I see there are a number of organizations that are, developing and coming on the scene, which I think is great because the more hands that we have put in this work to ensuring that our children are safe and they're able to be productive individuals in society, the better off we'll be as a community. All right. And so find something for your child to do this summer. Find a child that needs something to do this summer. But whatever you do, please find a way to find a child so we can stop losing them.